Welcome to Graybeard Radio, where we turn wisdom into impact and income, and gurus and fakery are reviled. I'm your host, Matt Hempel, bringing you conversations with and for men 50 plus who prioritize health and longevity, relevance and meaningful work, and connection, all while leveraging the best in tools and technology. Ladies, welcome. No beard required. With that said, I would love to introduce to you and welcome to the show Mark Kaye. Mark Kaye is most recently a friend and a mentor, and has helped me actually launch this enterprise that we're calling the Graybeard Radio podcast. And a little bit about Mark. Everybody gets a bio to start. Mark is a nationally recognized conservative broadcaster, entrepreneur, and podcast host, known for blending political commentary with sharp humor, high energy storytelling. He hosts the popular daily shows Mark Kaye Saves the Republic and the 47 Daily, where he breaks down politics, media, and culture for a growing audience of engaged Americans. So with a combined social media reach in the millions and an email community of over 35,000 subscribers, Mark has built one of the most active grassroots audiences in conservative media. His content focuses on defending free speech, exposing media hypocrisy, and helping everyday Americans stay informed and engaged. In addition to his broadcasting career, Mark is the founder of multiple online programs that teach entrepreneurs, creators, and business owners how to build authority and monetize their platforms through podcasting and content creation. He's created more than $1.5 million online, helping others turn influence into income. And that's what we're all about around here at Graybeard Radio, Mark. So Mark is also currently running for Congress in Florida, bringing his passion for the Constitution, free markets, and American exceptionalism from the microphone to the campaign trail. When he's not podcasting, creating content, or speaking to audiences around the country, Mark is building new ways for creators and entrepreneurs to grow their platforms and take control of their voices in the digital age. With that said, Mark Kaye, welcome. So glad to see you, my friend. It's great to have you here on the Graybeard Radio podcast. That was a quick little intro that we went through there.
I don't know if that was quick. We got to run that through AI and have them take out like half of it. No, that was amazing. First of all, I feel like an idiot because I shaved last night. And I thought to myself, I should have left. It wasn't a big beard, but there was a little bit of gray stubble, which would have been. Second of all, I have to applaud you because where fakery is reviled is one of the best lines I've ever heard. That's where fakery is reviled. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I just don't do very well with it anymore. Maybe it's my advanced age. Maybe it's, having quite a few decades under my belt so far on this spinning rock here, but don't do too well with the inauthenticity, and
No patience.
just thought it was a little wry little jab at a lot of the fake influencers and the fakery and the politicians and a lot of the other folks out there that run around these days in public and online on social media. So, with that said, I'd love to dig right in with you, Mark.
Let's do it.
Can you take us back? Let's dig into your backstory. Let's dig into kind of where you grew up, what your family was like growing up, and kind of what got you into radio and media. And let's talk about maybe some crossroads or some decision points or some people that influenced you early on and kind of helped make you into the person that you are today.
Well, that is first of all, I'll tell you that's I didn't know we were going that far back. Yeah, no, I was actually, a lot of people know I was born in Canada, not by choice. That was an unfortunate incident, but I moved here when I was 8 years old and I became an American citizen when I was in my early 20s. Really one of the most amazing things that ever happened. But as an American citizen, as a naturalized citizen, I find myself like most naturalized citizens, really, really passionate about the United States of America and really, really passionate about some of the issues, like, for example, illegal immigration. In fact, whenever I meet people who are from other communist countries like Cuba or Venezuela or Russia or Canada, we always have very spirited conversations about that. But early on, I mean, my parents weren't together after I was 8 years old, and I spent most of the time with my dad, and we listened in the radio to Paul Harvey every day. Paul Harvey was like a big deal. The rest of the story, everybody, we always had to stop and listen to the entire Paul Harvey, and I loved it. My dad was a big fan. So that was kind of my early influence into radio, but I really wanted to be, oddly enough, a filmmaker. So I went to film school at NYU, which was an which was an interesting choice. Yeah, I was a little conservative, Christian kid from North Carolina, and I rolled into NYU for film school. And I did kind of a split major between film and political science. And then I just went into radio. So 4 years of wasted college education, but it was, it was fun. I enjoyed my experience. I really learned how to debate because I think that's where I got my skills, was going to the most liberal university in the country. And then, when I graduated, I moved back to North Carolina. I moved to Chapel Hill, and I got a job at a restaurant where I worked for a little while. They promoted me to management, and that's when I realized I don't want to actually manage a restaurant. So I got the only media job I could find in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that was in radio. And that was it. The rest was history.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And that's, of course, from our discussion before, that's right in my backyard. We've lived in North Carolina now for 12 years. Coming up this summer, it'll be 12 years. And we actually have a daughter that's at UNC Chapel Hill in her first year. So we're very excited about that, and getting to know all the ways and the traditions of the Tar Heel
Go Heels
nation over there, and Go Heels, and Franklin Street, and the whole bit. It's a lot of fun. We love the area, and I imagine you did too, at least for the time that you were here.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So tell us about that first job and what it was like, and again, what kind of formed your viewpoints and your capabilities, formulated your capabilities in radio and in delivery. And maybe you could just share a couple of lessons that you learned along the way early on.
Yeah.
And then let's take it from there.
Well, I learned, like I said, I was working at a restaurant, and I decided the best way, because I'd become a manager of this place. I was 411 West. You may have been there. It's right there in Chapel Hill. Delicious Italian food. But I realized as a manager that I had the ability to write out gift cards and access the t-shirt closet. So what I did was I printed up like 10 copies of my resume, and I wrote out 10 $50 gift cards and signed them. And I got 10 t-shirts, and I put them all in envelopes, and I sent them out to every radio station, every TV station in Raleigh, because that was the closest thing to the film industry we had in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I thought, this is great. I'm definitely going to get a job, because who doesn't love free food and swag? And one by one, I started getting these packages sent back to me. And I didn't understand why until I opened one up, and there was a letter from one of the program directors or one of the station managers saying, "Thank you so much for your interest. We are not allowed to accept bribes in place of employment," which shocked me, because I thought that's how the media industry worked. And so then I realized I'd basically shot myself in the foot, because I tried to bribe my way into local media, and nobody was having it except for this one guy by the name of Kip Taylor. And he ran the Top 40 station. And clearly the Top 40 radio program director had absolutely no moral values or ethics when it comes to hiring, because he called me and said, "Hey, thanks so much for the shirt. When can you come in for an interview?" And I went in, and he hired me right off the spot. So that's when I learned that, bribery works if you're bribing the right people. And after that, I learned a second very valuable lesson when I worked at the radio station, because my first job was running the Rick D's weekly Top 40, which it was it was a boring job, because I had to be there at 5 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday morning, and you just hit a button. You waited for 15 minutes till Rick D's stopped. You hit another button. Half the time you would fall asleep. It was really crazy. But what I learned was people above me would eventually quit or get fired. And for example, after a while, the afternoon guy on Sundays got fired. So they called me up because they were in a pinch, and I went, and then all of a sudden I became the Sunday afternoon guy. Then the overnight guy disappeared one day, and he wound up a week later in some kind of prison in California. So they called me up. They said, "We need you to be the overnight guy." So then I got promoted to that position. And eventually I just waited it out long enough for so many people to get fired that I became the morning show producer for a very popular show called Bob and Madison. And as the morning show producer, that's when I really realized that I could just talk and make jokes and just, we did various ridiculous things and get paid for it. And so that's how those were my early lessons from breaking into the radio industry.
Very cool. Very cool. And of course, I think, what was that, in your early 20s, basically? For all
Yeah,
of,
about
yeah,
21, 22, right?
yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing when I was 21, 22, and I'm guessing you were pretty much the same way.
I still really don't know
Um,
what I'm doing, I'll be honest with you, but yes.
yeah. So that's awesome. So take me back to the Jacksonville years. Now, what
Yeah.
year did you, and did you move any other places between the Raleigh area and Jacksonville, North Carolina?
Yeah, I left.
Um,
I left Raleigh. I got a job as a morning show host. Well, it was really interesting. There was a guy in New Jersey who ran a radio station, and his sister lived in Raleigh and heard me as the kind of backup or the the sidekick to this morning show. And she called her brother and said, "You got to hire this guy. He'd be great as a host." So my first hosting job was in New Jersey on the Jersey Shore, where I lasted about 9 months because I don't, the Jersey Shore is only fun in the summer. It shuts down after 3 months.
yeah.
There's really nothing there. So there was a brand new radio station in Washington, D.C., which my wife told me to apply to. And we applied, my co host and I, and we got an interview. And for some reason, they decided to pluck us from New Jersey and put us in the nation's capital. And that was really amazing. That was one of my favorite jobs ever. And we really grew a huge following. We were very popular. We got to know a lot about DC and the suburbs, and got a lot of great, really great experience. But the guy who hired me left for another job, and they brought in another guy. And that's when I learned about nepotism, because the guy that they
Oh,
brought
yeah.
in, he had a best friend who wanted to be a morning show host in Washington, D.C. So we were out and he was in. And that's when I
Sure.
ended up in Jacksonville, Florida. But we've been here now, gosh, going on 20, God, let's see, it's 2007, going on 20 years in
Yeah.
Jacksonville. And it's
Yeah.
really, it's an ideal place, Florida, to live, especially in this day and age.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit of nepotism.
It's
Wow.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. It happens. Let me ask you. I lived in the DC area
Mhm.
in from 1996
Right.
through 2004. Were you there during that period of time?
Yeah, I got there in 2000 and
Okay.
I left in 2007.
Okay.
Yeah,
About when I left,
yeah,
around 2007. So who knows? Our paths may have even crossed at some point
maybe.
in time. Who knows? But were you? Did you ever meet or know Don and Mike from the Don and Mike show?
I did. I did know Don and Mike. I knew them very well. In fact, when we got there, we were brand new, and of course, they'd been there forever.
Yeah.
And Don and Mike, we did an event that got some. I won't talk about it here because it's probably one of the events I shouldn't mention. We did an event that got some local exposure, because that's what our job was to get local exposure, and not positive local exposure, but they say there's no such thing as bad publicity. And so Don and Mike did like an hour on our event and our show and how ridiculous we were and how stupid we were. And I was and of course my wife's from DC, so all her relatives have listened to Don and Mike. She listened to Don and Mike when she was growing up. So
Mhm.
they're ripping us to shreds over this event that we did that got negative publicity and negative blowback. And everybody in my family is just thrilled to death because Don and Mike are talking about me. Needless to say, I was on the station across the street every day too, but they didn't seem to care. But no, after that, so we sent them a thank you note and a bouquet of flowers and some donuts, I think, because Don and Mike really like donuts. And we kind of that was kind of our long back and forth with Don and Mike.
Yeah.
They were great guys. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of fun to listen to. I think it was the afternoon drive home
Mhm.
when they were on, and
That's
we.
right.
I think whenever they finished up, however it is they finished up, I think the Sports Junkies took over
Sports.
for them,
Yep.
if
I
I'm
know.
not mistaken. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about Jacksonville.
Sure.
So, um, you moved you moved around a little bit. Talk to us about the Jacksonville years, and sounds like really when you started building your career in earnest, and you became a staple on Jacksonville radio morning show on 95.1 WAPE. I have here,
Yep.
and
That's
then the
right.
Mark Bay show on 104.5 WOKV. Talk to us about that period of time. What were some of the biggest wins and some of the toughest challenges that you experienced regarding your reputation and
Yeah.
audience and building an audience in traditional radio?
Well,
Um,
oh yeah,
yeah,
go ahead. No, yeah, I mean, so I had an interesting career because I worked for half of my life in top 40 radio, and we would, play music in the morning. We would do games. We would do silly pranks. We would talk about entertainment. We'd give away Justin Bieber tickets. It was that kind of thing. And eventually, we moved here. I guess I was like in my mid 30s. My son had just been born, and it was fine for a while. But when I got into my really like my early 40s, I kind of thought to myself, there comes a point. Right now, it's fine. I can talk to 18-year-old girls and give them Justin Bieber tickets and T-shirts and that kind of thing. But eventually, there's a point where I feel like that just becomes awkward, or it's just not what I want to be doing with the rest of my life.
Kind of grew out of it a little bit.
Yeah. So I was a big Rush Limbaugh fan. Every day, I was, into that point where I was really starting to get into politics. It was the Obama years, so of course there was a lot to talk about. And Rush was, he was the king of the hill, and he was on our station, our talk station, 104.5. The same company owned it. So I would get in my car after my morning show about noon, and I'd listen to Rush driving home. And I became a super fan, of course, just like everybody else. And I'd sit in I'd get home for lunch, and my wife would come out, and I'd be sitting in my car listening to the radio. She's like, "What are you doing?" I go, "Shh." Yeah. Rush is monologuing. So
12 to 3, right?
12 to 3. That's exactly right. Yeah. The fastest 3 hours in radio. So eventually I decided that, that's something that I could do, and I really would be interested in doing. And so I went to my boss and I said, "Hey, I want to do like a weekend show on the talk station," because it was all same building, same owner. I go, "I think down the road, this could be something for me." And he said, "Absolutely not." I go, "Okay." So I kept going back like every couple months, and I came up with a pitch deck, and I came up with an idea. And finally he goes, "All right, listen, we're going to give you a show on Sunday nights at 7:00 for 1 hour, and we'll see how you do." So I went in, and for 1 hour on Sunday nights, I did a talk radio show. But Sunday nights at 7:00, nobody's listening to talk radio, especially during football season. So you couldn't really get a lot of phone calls. It was just me talking. There was no interaction. So that's when I turned to my social media prowess. I had a pretty big Snapchat following, and I would ask questions on Snapchat. People would send me videos. I would pull the audio off as answers, and I would play that on the air. And as far as I know, I was one of the first people to do that, and clearly one of the first in the company, but probably nationwide. And so they were shocked by that. They were stunned. And eventually I got more opportunities. The show took off. Herman Cain, who ran for president, you may know him. He was also
I've met him. Yep.
Yeah, so he worked for the company in Atlanta, and he was on about 400 stations at the time. And one Christmas they called me up and said, "Hey, Herman's taken off on vacation. We want you to come to Atlanta and fill in for him for 2 days." And I thought, wow, that's impressive. So I told my wife I'm going up in December for 2 days to fill in for Herman Cain. And I prepped and I did everything, and I went in there and I had a blast. It was, again, walked in all nervous, but then 3 hours later, I couldn't believe it was over. Yeah. And the program director came in. He was ecstatic. He goes, "People are just saying how great it was. It was the best. People are just amazing." And then his phone rang, and he goes, "Oh, I think it's for you." And he handed it to me, and it said Herman Cain.
No kidding.
And I'm like, and I just got done doing his show, and now he's calling me. And I go, "Hello?" And he's like, "Is this Mark?" And I go, "Yes." "Is this Mr. Cain?" He goes, "I wanted to tell you, you did a good job." And I was confused. I thought he was on vacation. And I said to him, I go, "Oh, I didn't know you were listening." And he goes, "I didn't hear it. My wife called me. She thinks you're funny." And I was like, "Great. If Herman Cain's wife thinks that I'm funny, then I'm good to go." So I started filling in regularly for him. And then one day he calls me up out of the blue. Something had happened with Facebook, and he had to do a story about Facebook, and he knew nothing about Facebook, but he knew I was, kind of tuned in. So he calls me up one morning. He goes, "Do you know anything about Facebook?" And I go, "I know a lot about Facebook." He goes, "You're on the show at 10. And he hung up. So I called him up at 10. I was on the show. We did like 20 minutes on whatever story it was.
Wow.
Then the next week he had a question about, I don't know, Instagram. So he called me up. We did another story about that. Then it was something about some entertainment story he didn't know about. So I got a regular segment on Herman's show.
Nice.
And in 2016, he told me I was coming to the convention. Again, he never asked you, he just told you. He calls me up. He goes, "You're coming to the convention with me." And I go, "What convention?" He goes, "The Republican National Convention." And I go,
Oh, that's so cool.
So I got to be on the air with Herman Cain for his show at the Republican National Convention in 2016, where Donald Trump was nominated the first time, and it was really amazing.
That's awesome. What a great story. Now, Herman Cain is deceased now, is he not?
He is, yes. He passed away from COVID
Oh,
Gosh, about, I want to say now 4 years ago.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I thought that was the case. Well, I, any any lessons learned or any hard conversations that you had to have there that that really kind of cemented any viewpoints or lessons learned for you, and then maybe you could just segue into the crossroads moment. We're all about crossroads here at Graybeard Radio. It seems like we always arrive at one um, at one time or another, and as we get into our 50s and 60s. The crossroad moment for you, I think, was in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. Can you take us through what happened then and how you came out of it and what it was like being in the middle of that and what it was like to come through the other side?
Oh, sure. So eventually I transitioned totally from top 40 radio to talk radio. In fact, Herman kind of stepped aside and retired a little bit, and I took his show, which was ironic. So my show was from 10 to noon every single day. I got to finally do daily talk radio, and it was really amazing. It was political talk. And then when Rush passed away, I remember I was sitting there with my producer in the studio, and we were off at noon, and then Rush came on next, and we'd all known that he was sick. We knew that Rush Limbaugh was, his treatments weren't working, and we weren't sure when he was going to pass, but we knew that it was known that it was going to happen. And then one day we're sitting there and we hear his widow come on, and Catherine, she starts talking, and we're like, uh-oh. And she told us the news. And I remember turning to my producer and going, I feel so sorry for whoever the poor fool is that has to take over for Rush Limbaugh. And they called me into the office like 20 minutes later. They said, hey, guess what? We're going to put you on noon to 3 on all 6 of our radio stations. So
Ooh,
I was that poor fool. But it was really kind of an honor. And I felt really excited about it because I was a fan. And I thought to myself, it's better that somebody who knew Rush and was a
yeah,
fan of his, it's better that they are in that position. So I was okay with it. And we did that for years. Then what happened was there was another changing of the guard. The guys who hired me, the guys who gave me that shot, they left. One of them retired. One of them went to another company. And we were in talks for syndicating the show. We were in talks for extending my contract, but for whatever reason, they had different plans, and they said, "Hey, we're gonna," they had two guys doing the same job in two different markets, and they chose the
yeah,
other.
yeah,
So, and my wife and I sat down and we talked about it. And I said, look, I could go work somewhere else for for somebody else, and they could call the shots again. But we've got a family and we've got to support them, and we don't want to move anymore. And we've got to, take matters into our own hands. So I started my podcast network and I started my social media company. And that was, a couple years ago, about 2 years ago now, and things are going great.
that's awesome. That's awesome. What was it? I mean, when that happened, that the other guy essentially they chose. I mean, there was two of you kind of doing the same thing, and
Yeah.
what was that like when you got that news, and how did you manage your way through that particular tough spot?
Well, I was mad because he was just awful. Like it's not like he was talented. He's just horrible. Nobody liked him. In fact, we used to fill in for him when he would go on vacation, and everyone would call the radio station and say, "Hey, can we get Mark Kaye full time?" And
Yeah,
that made him angry. So then we stopped. Then when I go, "Why don't we fill in for this guy anymore?" They're like, "Well, he doesn't like the phone calls." So that angers me. If it were somebody, not that I think there's anybody who could do it better than me, but if it were somebody that I thought were at least halfway decent, so that was really what was kind of annoying. Also, the corporate lifestyle, I guess I never really blended into that corporate
yeah,
lifestyle. There's a lot of people who are born to do it. There's a lot of people that can really navigate it. I'm not one of them. And so, without having my friends at the top, I was forced to navigate it on my own, and I didn't do a very good job, apparently. So,
yeah, yeah. Well, that's awesome, and provides another nice segue into the podcasting and all the programs that you've undertaken and the people that you're helping now. And
yeah,
I'm going to just interrupt here just a little bit with a little commercial message for Graybeard Radio. And before we dig into your expertise, Mark, around podcasting and how you're helping others build their own platforms,
yeah,
um, so this is directly speaking to men in your 50s or 60s, late career, early retirement. Maybe you're burnt out. Maybe you're at a crossroads. Maybe you're in early retirement or late career. maybe you've just got this nagging feeling that there's got to be something more, something different than what you're doing right now. And that's exactly why we created Graybeard Radio. We exist to provide you with information, clarity, inspiration for the road ahead. One of the reasons we have Mark on today is that very reason, and we'll get into that a little bit further with him. But we're not just here to tell stories. We're here also to equip you with real tools and actual resources to help you extract and crystallize all that knowledge that you have built up in your head, all of the expertise you've built, all of the experience, and turn it into something valuable in the marketplace. So, whether you're thinking about pivoting to a different role in your same industry or going independent as a consultant or a coach or stepping into a fractional executive position as a CEO, CFO, COO, or even launching some kind of online education venture where you share what you know, or perhaps starting a podcast. We are building the infrastructure and resources here at Graybeard Project and Graybeard Radio to help you do that exact same thing. And we're talking about helping seasoned professionals, blue collar, white collar, business owners, all of you dig deep into all of the hidden troves of crystallized intelligence and bring them out into a format that you can actually use to build something on your own terms and according to your own rules. And Mark, I think that's exactly what you did in your transition from radio into the podcasting and social media space. And I realize that you didn't transition into the social media space necessarily. You'd been there for a while, but let's talk about the power of podcasting and from your own experience and success. And what are the unique strengths and advantages of podcasting that you see in the marketplace? And especially as it pertains and relates to the audience that we just described, what are some of the things that podcasting really brings to the table for these folks?
Well, podcasting has grown so quickly. It's amazing, but it's freedom. Number one, you have the ability to create a broadcast that anybody can access, and you don't have a gatekeeper. You don't need to go work for a radio conglomerate. You don't need to be syndicated on 600 stations. You don't need to worry about commercial interruptions. You can call your own shots. People can access it, whenever they want. And if you listen to the radio and you get out of your car and you come back, it's not the same show. But with a podcast, you can pick up right where you left off. They're very portable. You can, people are listening in the gym, they're listening in the shower, they're listening in their cars, everywhere else. Podcasting, it's powerful too. I mean, it's a one-on-one connection that you're making with somebody. When you're hosting a podcast, you may have 10,000 listeners, but they're not all in the same room. It's not a movie theater. It's not a stadium.
Yeah, it's really a one-on-one connection.
Yeah. And that's what makes it so powerful. You're basically making one-on-one connections with thousands of people at the same time. And that's why podcasters are so beloved, especially with their audience, or hated. Same thing. But it's just become such an incredible medium, and so many people are discovering it. And the best part is too, it's also an asset. I mean, it really truly is when you formulate it the right way, and you know this because you're doing it. You're creating a business asset. You're basically creating a recorded, owned, I guess, record of your thinking and your processes and your values. And that is something that you can distribute over and over again. So it's really, really fantastic.
Yeah, and there's no shelf life necessarily. It just goes on, and once it's out there, it's out there. And
Yeah.
Maybe you could talk a little bit now about some of the programs you have going on. Let's talk about the GAIN program.
Sure.
Let's talk about the Authority launch operating system that you've most recently. Love to learn a little bit more. I know about them because
about it. Yeah.
I have the backstory and the insider information, of course. But let's not have it be insider information. Let's get the word out about what you're doing, and then let's talk about the multiple streams of revenue that are possible with podcasting, and just briefly describe the business model that you see that works best for most people around that.
So I always was very involved with social media from the get-go, and I was one of the first people to blend it into radio. I mentioned to you earlier how I use Snapchat. The company I worked for, they actually built their own app where people could record their own audio messages and send them in to play on the air. I was the first to live stream my radio show on Facebook and YouTube and other places like that. And now every single radio broadcaster does the same thing. And as it says, Snapchat, in fact, there's a big Business Insider article about me about 10 years ago. They wrote a story because I hosted a talk show on Snapchat. And I was one of the most followed people on the platform. I got flown all over to Las Vegas, New York. They flew me to Germany to speak about Snapchat to a bunch of broadcasters. So I've always kind of had my hand in social media and seen that it's going to be the future. And so with all of that being said, I also had to weather a lot of the storms. Being a conservative radio broadcaster and being on social media, that doesn't always really go smoothly, especially during COVID, especially during the first Trump administration, especially during the 2020 insurrection, all those things. I was throttled, I was doxxed, I was demonetized. I had Rand Paul on my show and we were talking about masks. And remember, Rand Paul is not only a senator, but he's a doctor. And he literally said to me, I asked him, I go, so do these masks actually work? And he said to me, he goes, I'll answer that question, but just know if I answer that question, you're going to get canceled. And I said, all right, I'm curious, what's the answer? And he said, no, they don't. And truly 48 hours later, YouTube had demonetized my channel and deleted the video. And I thought to myself, this is amazing. This is a senator and a doctor. And all he said was masks don't work. And we got censored. So I realized that there was a real issue for that. And I started a program. It was originally called ACES. And that's for the American Conservative Empowerment Society. And it was for any conservative business owners who were having trouble navigating social media. And we got a couple dozen people signed up immediately. And we started working with them and we started showing them how to avoid the pitfalls of being a conservative on social media, how to avoid that kind of stuff. And then that grew into more people coming in to learn about, basic social media marketing. Then when President Donald Trump got reelected, we didn't really see those kinds of problems anymore. So we changed the name to GAIN, which stood for the Golden Age Influencer Network, because now we were like, oh, Trump's back. We're all going to be Golden Age influencers. And that's where we are now. But as people were joining my program, and it's I don't want to say it's a coaching program because it's way more. But as people started joining, we started to realize that podcasting was one of the most popular aspects. And most of the people that were joining were podcasters or wanted to be podcasters. Mm-hmm. So we started to really tailor our content toward podcasting and what makes a good podcast and how to start a podcast for business or for whatever. And then with the advent of AI, and because I'm a big AI fan, as I know you are, I took the whole system and we basically automated it. So now Authority Launch OS, which is our Authority Launch operating system, really is a series of AI tools that you can use to, in 48 hours, conceptualize, create, claim your authority, figure out who your avatar is, who your audience is, what their needs are, what pain points they need it to express. It'll build out your entire podcast platform, including logos and images, taglines. It'll build out episodes. It'll link your episodes to your target audience, and then it'll teach you how to monetize it as well. And so that's the platform we now use. And with that becomes, membership and GAIN. So you not only get the installation, but you get ongoing support from like-minded entrepreneurs. Yeah. And that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah. And as a user, I'll just jump in and say I've been very impressed with what you've been able to put together and what I've been able to do with what you've put together so far. A lot of the, well, not a lot, at least some of the items that you just mentioned, we had already done kind of the old-fashioned way, and but the AI most definitely, and some of the AI specific tools that you've modeled specifically are very, very helpful, and just compress the timeline significantly. I would say that's kind of the main thing. It's almost like having an expert on the other end of the computer that you can converse with and just have real conversations with, and kind of give you real no BS guidance about, no, this is a better direction to go, and might want to think about this versus that kind of thing. It's been very impressive. So
thanks.
So cool. Let's real quick talk about, if you could just really quick go through the different areas that we can use, that we can monetize our podcasts in real quick. And then I'd like you to pivot into your run for Congress, and then we can wrap up.
Perfect. So I mean, the thing about podcasting is there's 100 different ways to monetize. It all depends. I mean, because basically a podcast is not, it's a vehicle. So monetization comes from whatever you bring to that vehicle. Your authority really is what helps people monetize. So, yes, you could monetize the basic way with a revenue share program. That's where, there's ads that run on your YouTube channel, or there's ads that run on your Facebook channel, or there's ads that run on your podcast, and you get a portion, you get, fractions of a penny for every ad that runs. That's okay. It's nice income, but unless you're Mr. Beast, it's not, you're not
Yeah,
making substantial, you're not making millions of dollars. And then of course the problem there is, as I've experienced several times myself, they can always
yeah.
take that away from you. They can demonetize you, and then all of a sudden you're out of luck. You don't have any kind of income. There's affiliate programs which are also great, which is where you find affiliate offers from companies, whether it's a software company or whether it's a clothing company or a marketing company. I have a gold IRA company that I work with, and
Oh,
it's
nice.
fantastic because my audience is conservative. They don't
Yeah.
trust, they don't trust cryptocurrency or the stock market, and they want to protect their retirement, and gold is a great investment. So I
Sure.
promote the gold company to my audience, and they pay me various stipends for leads and investments and that kind of thing. So there's also that opportunity.
Hmm.
One of the big things now, which is really great, is people are using podcasts as sales mechanisms, and they interview their ideal clients and then sign them to long-term contracts. For example, if instead of just interviewing an expert in your field, you find somebody that you would pitch on a sales call, the CEO of some company for, whatever your consultancy is, you invite them on a podcast. You spend an hour talking to them about their business, talking to them about what's happening, what's hurting, what's not, what they need help with. And then
Right.
after that, you can pivot and say, hey, thank you for being on my podcast. By the way, I can totally help you with everything you talked about. So people are transforming sales calls into podcast interviews and having immense
That is
success.
that is such a smart idea, and
Yeah.
I've seen that happen a little bit, not very much,
Yeah.
and I don't know whether that's I don't know whether it's something you invented, Mark, or if it's
I
just an
can't take
idea that you can't take
I
credit for
will
that
take it.
one.
I can't take the credit, but I have seen it very effectively. I mean, and think about it. If you're in the sales position, if you're like a B2B salesperson, and you write to somebody and say, hey, I'd like to get on the phone with you for an hour to walk through my product, they're not going to write you back. But if you
Yeah,
write to them and say, hey, I host the number one podcast in your industry, and I would love to have you on as my guest to talk about all of your, successes and corporate, experience, they're going to jump at that chance. And then you
yeah,
let them do that, but you've now formed a relationship. You've made them a celebrity, and they're of course going to be now more susceptible to your offers. So absolutely, that's going to be big. That's going to be big.
yeah. So it's such a smart idea. Anything else before we get to your congressional run?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say the thing about podcasting that people don't realize is that it's there's a lot of podcasts that start and not a lot that sustain. And one of the, as I got into kind of, teaching this and helping people and really marketing myself with Authority Launch and everything else, I realized that if you can get past 4 episodes of a podcast, you are in the top 10% of podcasters, because most don't
Wow.
get past three. If you can get
Okay.
to 20 episodes, you're in the top 1%. So it's a field that's easy to enter, but it really takes consistency. And that's, and then my wife always says, someone starting a podcast, or there's more political podcasts? I go, don't worry about it. There's very few that actually stick around long enough
Yeah,
to make an impact. So if you're
yeah,
thinking about starting one, or if you want to start one, don't be concerned about competition or anything else, because most of them come and go. And if you can stick it out, then you have some real
yeah.
staying power.
So saturation, really not an issue.
No, I mean, it's just everyone has a Facebook page, everyone has a Twitter account.
Yeah,
Those aren't, but people still get a lot of views and a lot of listeners and a lot of fans.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk real quick, Mark, about your
Sure.
congressional run.
Yeah.
Which district? You're in the Northeast Florida district. Is it 4 or 5?
It's District 5 in Northeast
Okay.
Florida. That's right.
Yeah. Tell me how that's been so far. Kind of what prompted you, what motivated you to take that step,
Yeah.
and yeah, talk us through that real quick.
So as a prominent political voice in the area, A few years back, we had our congressman, a guy by the name of John Rutherford. We had him on the show because Kevin McCarthy, I don't know if you remember this, but Kevin McCarthy was ousted from his speaker position in the
I
Speaker of the House
remember.
position by Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz was also a Florida congressman at the time. And another guy named Jim Jordan, who was from Ohio, he was the number one choice of conservatives to become the Speaker of the House. And they started the voting process, and he never could quite cross the threshold. There were about 10 Republican congressmen who refused to vote for him. They were all voting for Steve Scalise. And our congressman, John Rutherford, was one of those 10. Nobody else in Florida was supporting Steve Scalise. Every other congressman that we knew of was supporting Jim Jordan. And so we got him on the phone, which was odd because he doesn't really talk on the phone. And we started asking, we go, look, we get a lot of calls from people. We get a lot of emails. Everybody wants Jim Jordan. All the other Congress people in Florida are voting for Jim Jordan. Why?
Yeah.
Why don't you vote for Jim Jordan? That's what your constituents want. And he told us, it was very, this is like a man who's in his 70s. And he told me, he goes, if I vote for Jim Jordan, then Matt Gaetz wins. And so clearly he had some animosity toward Matt Gaetz, or he was buddy with Kevin McCarthy. I didn't know what it was. But at that point in time, we realized he didn't really care what his constituents wanted. He had a bone to pick, and he wasn't going to let Matt Gaetz win. And that's kind of when we started looking into him a little bit. We started looking at his congressional record. And that's when people started reaching out to me saying, this guy, you don't even know, he's voting for non-conservative issues. He's voting for woke. I mean, Joe Biden, when he was president, he would side with the Democrats on 90% of the issues. He has a terrible voting record. I didn't know any of this because I never looked at it. And so a woman named Mara Macy was running against him in the upcoming election. And she asked me to support her, and I did. And she didn't cross the threshold. She wasn't able to make up the votes that she needed. So he became the congressman again. And then the next time around, I went back to her. I said, hey, are you thinking of running again? She goes, I'm not going to be able to beat him. And I said, why not? She goes, the only person that can beat this guy is somebody who's hyper conservative and has name recognition in the area. And I go, like who? And she goes, well, like you. And so I realized I do have name recognition in the area. I've been on the radio for 20 years and, I'm conservative and I have, more of a youthful demeanor than he has. So we talked about it a little bit. We investigated it and we decided, we were going to do it. Now we started early, which I had a guy consult me, goes, don't start too early. But I planned a big announcement. August 18th is the primary. So 1 year out, we did a huge event and we announced our run and we had yard signs and hats and everything else. And it was great. But a year out is way too far out because nobody cares about an election until about 4 weeks before.
Yeah.
So we started, we're doing some events. They slowed down over the holidays. Now we're in fundraising mode. And we're really going to, really the consensus is because it's an August primary, June, July, and August are the months to really, really make impact. So rather than, because we're not the mainstream candidate, we're the underdog, we're not going to blow any resources until we absolutely have to. Yeah. And then we're going to, just going to blitzkrieg the area and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, interesting. That's a great story and wish you the very best of that. My history real quick. I was in the Navy for a number of years, active in reserves for about 22 years. So I was actually stationed in the Jacksonville area. But one of my tours, I was stationed in Washington, D.C. I went to graduate school at George Washington University, and I interned, was a legislative fellow, I guess, up on Capitol Hill for a congressman named J.C. Watts. Who was part of the incoming freshman class in the Gingrich Revolution.
Yeah, that's right.
Of 1994. So I do have a little exposure and fun. And then I moved over to work for Jim Inhofe, the senator from Oklahoma after that. So great experience. I loved it. And so I kind of know a little bit about how these congressional offices run and so forth.
It's fun, but also really not what you expect. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. Wish you the very, very best of luck with that effort, Mark. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and wrap up. We have two signature questions that we ask everybody that we wrap up, and let's just narrow that down to one in this case, in the interest of time. If you had to go back and have a conversation with your 25-year-old self after all of these years of learning what you've learned and all the experiences and wisdom and experience that you've developed and
Yeah.
built up over the years. What are a couple of things you'd go back and tell your 25-year-old self that might help somebody else out there that's trying to figure it out at this point?
I would say buy gold. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, I would have said that. That would have been a great investment. It's wow, 25 years old. It's really interesting because I definitely think that I was really late to the game on one thing. I thought that I was an entertainer. I thought that I was in broadcasting, that kind of thing. But really, I learned probably not too late, but later, that I was actually in the advertising business and that sales drives everything. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if you're the biggest movie star or if you're the biggest, talk show host or if you're Sean Hannity or whoever, it's all about sales. And if you don't understand that, it doesn't matter what you do. And if you work for a company and you can help them make sales, if you can drive revenue, you have value. And being in the radio industry and the TV industry, there were two parts. There was programming and sales. And the programming department created the product, but then the sales department sold it. And we always thought we were the most important, and the sales knew that they were the most important.
Yeah.
So there was always this animosity. I don't know if it's like that in every industry, but it was really prominent in the radio and TV industry. And I think that I had more animosity toward the sales department when I really probably could have been learning a lot more from them.
Right.
But anybody who understands that business is all about every business is about sales. I think if I'd learned that at 25 years old instead of later in life, I would have had a much easier
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. I mean, without sales, there's nothing else matters really.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mark, thank you so much for
Oh,
taking
Matt.
some time today and spending some time with us and sharing some great stories and a little bit of great history there and some lessons learned and all the rest of it. We really appreciate your time. And let's go ahead and wrap up here, Graybeard Radio. We're going to have an AI expert from Red Hat on later in the week. And I don't know when these will be distributed and when the episodes will actually come out, but that's one that you do not want to miss. We're all about technology and tools and software and how it applies to people's everyday practical lives here at Graybeard Radio and how we can use them to improve our lives. So that AI question is huge right now. So I'd really love for everybody to come back, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And with that said, thank you, Mark.
Thanks,
Have
Matt.
a great day, everybody. Let's sign off for now. See you next time.